When it comes to bringing change into our life, into our businesses, the question we always have is, how do we go about it? So today I want to share with you my model around the trifecta of transformation. Because you see, when we want to change, to bring change, we actually have many ways to bring change, and they all influence one or the other. So the first way that we can bring change is I can think differently. If I think differently, things change. As Henry Ford said, if you think you can do it, you're right. If you think you can't do it, you're also right. We know this, but sometimes thinking differently, we just don't know how to do it, or it just doesn't work. I'm sure this happens to you, and this already happened to you, that it just doesn't work. So the second way, the second axis that we can use to bring change is the language, to talk differently. Recently, I was talking with some clients, and I was chit-chatting and saying, how are you doing? How are you guys doing? And the first answer was, oh, we're busy. We are in a time where it's glorified to be busy, and we are busy being busy on a regular basis. But how empowering is it to be busy? It's not. It brings us into contraction. It brings us into doing. It brings us into fear and patterns that we just don't see. So what did I do? Is I brought them to talk about, to use a different language, different around it. I'm like, hey, how about instead of being busy, you guys we played around with, I'm very efficient. Every day, I'm more and more efficient. Or you know what? Every day I have a little bit more time. So these two sentences that I offered them bring us in an expansion mindset, and an expansion where we feel better, we feel more empowered. There I can find solution, innovation, different way of strategies, bringing change from that place. And the third way to bring upon change is acting differently. The way that I see it is there's three levels of behavior. There's reaction, where something happens and my pattern just kicks in. There's an action, and then there's an intentional action. My goal is always to bring my client into intentional actions, because that really is where we are in alignment with what do we want to do, where do we want to go, what do we want to accomplish, what do we want to build. So you see, these three axes, they act as three different doors that we can use to bring change. Think about something that you want to change, a transformation you want to bring in your business. Sometimes we can act differently, but sometimes it just doesn't work. Can I talk about it differently? Can I use a different language? Can I think about it differently? When we see that transformation, there's many doors that I can use. Then I have this flexibility of, hey, this doesn't work, but this works. Sometimes thinking differently, my neural pathways have been so used to thinking a certain way that I can't seem to think differently. But maybe I can talk about it differently. Maybe I can act with intention that's going to bring me change. And they all influence each other. If I act differently, I will talk differently, I will think differently. If I start thinking differently, I will act differently, and I will speak differently. If I speak differently, I will think differently, I will act differently. So this trifecta, they're all influencing one and the other. We just need to play around with the doors that we use for change. And that's where the magic of transformation comes in. Because if I have only one way of doing something and it doesn't work, I don't see a way out. But if I say, hey, if door number 1 doesn't work, I have door number 2, and I also have door number 3 that I can play around with. And this trifecta of change is good for us when we want to bring transformation in our lives. It's also good for our clients, You can use this with your clients to help them think differently, talk differently, and act differently on an idea, recommendation that you have for them to help them reach their goal. You can bring them to talk about it differently. Instead of goals, we can talk about dreams, we can talk about aspirations. Instead of fears, we can see it as, how about we see this just as an obstacle that we have on the course? That's it. Changing the language influences tremendously the behavior. Thinking differently, I don't need to tell you, we all know this, that if I think differently, I will act differently. But we seem to often using the act, I will act differently, I will do things differently, but they don't stick. Because I just didn't do it. That door for that situation doesn't work. How about I look at it and I think about it differently? So by understanding that to bring transformation, there's 3 doors that I can work, that I can use, that I can get into. One of them will stick. And that's the magic of this trifecta. And as I was doing this, as I was putting pen to paper on this model that I use, I didn't really realize, and I couldn't name it before. I realized that the programs that I have are exactly in this. Invincible brings you to think differently. Impactful brings you to speak differently to yourself and to others. And unshakable makes you and brings you to act differently. So different people come into my world through these different programs. But in all of them, what it does, it brings a transformation. So my invitation this week is look at the model. Look at something that you want to bring, the one change that you want to bring in your business, in your life. What pillar, which door did you take up to now that it hasn't worked? And which other door could you give it a try now? And once you live it for yourself and you embody it for yourself, then you'll be able to embody it and play around with this for your clients. When we have a tool like this, that's when we see that so much more is possible. Thank you for being here week after week, and I will see you next Tuesday.